my mission, to improve quality of life, we need to transform our industry. I love that moment where you bring someone who takes a different perspective and you create something really new for a client. And we need more of that. People look and they listen and they pay attention. And so it's so important to do that role modeling. And to do that, you need a productive, innovative, growing, healthy construction industry. I'm David Rockhill. I'm Global Head of Advisory at Arcadis, based in London. Arcadis is a consultancy working in the built and natural environment. Got about 36,000 architects, engineers, project managers, scientists, all with one mission, which is around improving the quality of life and doing that through infrastructure, the built and natural environment. We're using pretty cool stuff around the world. So we do a ton of work in water, for example, working with the city of San Diego on identifying new water sources and reducing water consumption. We're working with the city of New York on flood protection of the downtown area. We're building the first tunnel under the Hudson in 100 years, the Hudson Gateway Tunnel. And we're doing a ton of really cool environmental remediation work as well. So remediating old gas fields to make them habitable again, cleaning up old industrial sites, and then some pretty iconic transportation and real estate projects as well. So just recently I was out at Amsterdam Central Station, where we've renovated this incredible 150-year-old building. So you can tell, hopefully, I'm excited about what we're doing at Arcadis. I'm excited about the built environment. Now, I lead our consulting business. And what does that mean? Well, that is all about helping clients make the really tough decisions and solve the really tricky problems around getting infrastructure built and getting their organizations fit to deliver infrastructure. So that might be about figuring out the investment case or the funding behind a particular piece of infrastructure. It might be about figuring out the op model and organization that's needed to deliver a huge capital program. Or it might be around figuring out, okay, how do we build the supply chain capacity to deliver a whole new type of infrastructure? But it's all about helping clients make the decisions and do the difficult things around infrastructure. A bit about me and my background. So, I have a pretty, typical origin story when it comes to engineering and construction infrastructure. So as a kid, I loved building stuff. I love Lego. I love science and maths. I also, a bit strangely, loved making structures out of spaghetti and hot glue. I remember a model of the Eiffel Tower I built when I was about 10 years old, which I think I still have somewhere. But I've always had that passion around getting stuff built. And I started my career as an engineer. So I trained as a structural and geotechnical engineer. The amazing thing about doing that is you get a lot of responsibility very early. So I worked on some really cool projects, spent a lot of time out on site, and really learned my craft. And for me, that was the way of achieving this kind of goal of building cool projects and doing good stuff in the built environment. As I kind of moved up through that path as a kind of technical engineer, if you like, I started to feel a bit of frustration, and that was around really feeling that there were decisions being made or trade-offs being made that I wasn't party to and didn't have a voice in. So I'd find myself in meetings with the project manager, maybe the investor, risk manager, architect, and I would be listened to and have a voice on a very narrow range of topics. How long should this beam be, or what should this connection detail look like? But I was really interested in the other stuff that was going on and the other discussions that were going on to actually get infrastructure built. And I wanted to I wanted to learn about that and ultimately have a voice in that, because I recognized that engineers have a crucial and maybe most important role in delivering infrastructure, but there are so many other things that need to be in play to get projects delivered. And so I moved into consulting, and I spent probably 12, 13 years in consulting, first at PwC and then at McKinsey. And that really broadened my mind, if you like, and allowed me to experience all elements of the business world and all different functions and industries, and figure out all the different capabilities that come together to actually support an industry to deliver infrastructure, whether that's around supply chain, whether it's corporate finance, M&A, talent. It was a really great school to learn about all the different ingredients you need to make a successful business, in the sector. And subsequently moved to Arcadis, where we now have the opportunity to really reshape the industry and do what we need to do to deliver a pretty big ask on the global infrastructure sector over the next few years. And the thing that I can come back to on that whole experience, so starting off very technically and going to consulting, and now leading an engineering advisory business, is that my mission has kind of been the same throughout. So I've always been excited about delivering projects and getting stuff built. And whether at one time in my career that meant figuring out how to design a connection detail, and another time in my career that was about figuring out a talent strategy for a capital projects organization, or figuring out how to merge two building material companies, right? It's all underpinned by the same mission about delivering cool projects. And that would be the kind of, I guess, the advice, or the hard learned lesson that I've had in my career so far, is that no matter what you do, wherever you go, it's always really helpful to have a mission. And then you can be relaxed about what you're doing at any particular time in your career, but you're kind of anchored on that mission, and you can come back to that at any time. I think having a clear mission gives you a lot of freedom. And what I mean by that is that although I've been and explored many different areas of my career, it's always anchored me on something, and always made sure that even if I go left and right at different parts of my career, I'm generally going in the direction I want to head in. And I think that applies equally to being a founder and being a business builder, right? You'll find that your product evolves over time as you get deeper into customer needs and product market fit. But it's always helpful to have that mission. And although your product may change and your strategy may change, if you're anchored on a mission, it helps you ensure and check in that you're actually heading in the right direction and achieving what you set out to achieve. My family were always very supportive of my career choices. I come from in some ways, in some parts, a family of engineers. So my grandfather was a M&E engineer, several of my uncles as well. And so it was quite a natural path for me. But I think actually the thing that I took from my parents was something a bit different. So my father ran small businesses. I guess you'd call him an entrepreneur these days. And he taught me the importance of a couple of things. So one is actually, being a generalist, right? So being able to cover a whole breadth of topics, because when you're running a small business, you have to be able to cover all the bases, right? And he and my mother was an English teacher for many years, and they both also taught me the power of simple, effective communication as well, and how powerful that is in business and all walks of life. And that so it was an interesting, you might say, tension, or kind of two sets of influences on me, as I grew up and went into the workforce, were around this kind of technical discipline of engineering, but also this broader perspective of the importance of having a breadth of capabilities, strong communication, and actually the impact you can have if you can combine those two things. So that's always stayed with me. And this point about being a generalist to me is important. So, and this doesn't apply to everyone, but it's a trait that I think is very useful. And for me, throughout my career, I've always tried to kind of stray outside of my lane to some extent. And this would be the second lesson I've learned, stray outside of your lane sometimes. And what I find is that when I work in areas or move outside of my direct kind of area of experience, actually interesting things happen. So a couple of examples here. So when I was a engineer, I had a friend who was an illustrator, and I actually hired him into the engineering firm I was working in, and we started to develop our reports and our deliverables for our clients actually with illustrations in them rather than the traditional, at the time, 2D drawings. And we found this was incredibly powerful as a communication device and as a marketing tool. And actually, it just elevated our reports and created a much more dynamic relationship with the client, and just helped us communicate our designs with these kind of sketches and these illustrations that my kind of friend and colleague brought in. And when we did it at the time, people just didn't get it. But actually, when the client started responding to it, we saw it worked. It worked really well. Other examples, as I moved up through different consulting businesses. So I was at PwC for several years, and then 10 years at McKinsey. I actually started to explore different topics. One of the luxuries of working in a global consulting business is they often do many, many different things, and you can explore and try different things. And so I worked on topics like merger integration of post-merger integration of two multi-billion-dollar organizations in an industry I didn't know at all. And there you have to learn pretty fast, but you also learn a lot about things like supply chain, about a manufacturing footprint, about distribution, which again is also all useful business context to bring back to your work in the industry. Other examples, when you bring together different skills, interesting things happen. So one of my favorite things to do over the years is to bring in experienced designers into client engagements. So I remember one particularly well where we were working with small builders trying to understand how they buy building materials. And one of the kind of most fun things I did in my years in consulting was to bring in the experienced designers with a bunch of small builders and craftspeople, and really seeing how they started to understand how craftspeople think about sourcing materials, some of the pain points in their daily work, how you can start to address some of those pain points. And a very real example of that, our client was they're a builder's merchant, and they were emphasizing to us the importance of over-the-counter sales and being in person, and builders and craftspeople coming into the store buy materials. And so we started to explore that with the craftspeople themselves and understand, right, why is it you love coming into the store, and why do you want to come in, and what is it about that store experience you like? And what we found actually from these craftspeople is they didn't like coming into the store. They only came into the stores. They didn't trust the home delivery or the site delivery coming from the building material merchant. They said that they miss dates. It doesn't come on time. We're never sure when it's going to arrive, and so we just have to come into the store to pick things up. And we also come into the store because we like to negotiate prices, and we know that we can negotiate between stores for the same builder's merchant, which again is they're not coming to the store because they like coming to the store and they like the experience. They're coming to the store because they recognize the opportunity to do price arbitrage between different stores of the same company. And so the point here is that when you bring these groups together, when you stray outside of your lane, when you bring in new skills and experiences, you'll discover new things, and often you'll learn a lot yourself. So yeah, my lesson number 2 that I've learned over the years is always stray outside of your lane sometimes. Straying out of your lane is particularly important in our industry. Been in the industry for 25 years, but when you look at what we need to deliver as an industry over the next decades, right? When you think about the volume of infrastructure that needs to be delivered, and we're looking at a 20-30% increase in capital spend annually versus what we've seen over the last decades to address resilience of existing infrastructure, decarbonization and energy transition, demographic shift, affordable housing. There's so much that we need to deliver as an industry to improve quality of life. And to do that, you need a productive, innovative, growing, healthy construction industry. And for all its strengths, we don't have that as an industry at the moment. So my mission, to improve quality of life, we need to transform our industry. And you can only do that by combining new ideas and ideas from outside with the incredible experience and abilities we have in the industry. And so I love it when you can bring in someone from outside and they just take a slightly different view, right? Those experienced designers who really get to the heart of what craftspeople think and how they act when they buy and the decisions they make, or that illustrator who can look at the way that we communicate our designs differently. I love that moment where you bring someone who takes a different perspective and you create something really new for a client. And we need more of that. We need more of that. So I've talked about the important mission. I've talked about the interesting things you learn when you stray out of your lane. The third thing is about ambition. And the lesson, again, that I've learned is to be ambitious, but not reckless. And as I've already mentioned, right, as an industry, as an infrastructure sector, there's so much to do to transform the industry. And transformation is really, really hard. And what I've learned from working in transformations across industries, whether that's chemicals, whether it's basic materials, whether it's construction, whether it's infrastructure, you need ambition because it's going to get hard. And if your ambition is to improve, or grow by 1% to 2%, or take 0.5% out of your procurement costs, you're never going to get there. You need to set the goal high. If you want to achieve 20%, if you want to achieve 10% growth, you're going to have to target 20% growth. And so setting an ambition is so important. And it's important not to confuse ambition setting with forecasting, right? So in setting ambition, we're not saying this is exactly where we're going to get to. Actually, we're creating a target that's going to motivate and move and inspire the whole organization to go towards it, right? And you may not get there. You may overshoot it, who knows? But you may not get there. But too often, I've seen organizations getting fixated on trying to predict where they're going to get to, rather than actually sticking a ambitious target on the wall and saying, right, we're going after this. So ambition is important, but it's also important to be reckless. And so ambition needs to be underpinned with an extremely clear plan. You need to know where the value is coming from, right? So whether that value is about growth of your business, margin improvement, customer outcomes, your ESG outcomes, you need to have a clear plan that includes, where are we at the moment? What's our baseline? And where is the value going to come from? Is it going to come from particular initiatives? Is it going to come from certain renegotiations? You need to know, how do we break down the value? Where's it allocated? What are the initiatives we're going to drive to capture that value? And most importantly, who's going to drive it and who's going to be responsible for capturing that? So again, big ambition is important, but a clear baseline and a clear plan and accountability underpinning that is what it's going to take to deliver that ambition. The importance of being ambitious and not reckless is to strike the balance, right? So you need to inspire the organization with a bold target, but they need to believe and trust that actually there's a route to achieving that target. I remember one particular project that I was working on, client I was working with, where we had a extremely ambitious new CEO, extremely bold in their target setting, and set some super ambitious targets, but the organization simply didn't believe them, right? They wanted to be inspired, they wanted change, but they couldn't see a path to achieving those targets. And that's where it's so important to have that baseline and have the initiatives that clearly show you how you're going to get towards that target. So people can start to understand, how do I contribute to achieving that target? Because it's worthless having a super ambitious statement without having an organization that believes it can get to it by understanding how it can contribute to get to that target. Ambition setting, at the end of the day, is a leap of faith. You can do all the analysis you want, the market analysis, the forecasting, but at some point a leader needs to stand up and say, this is a number that we're going after. And I've seen this from the best kind of chief execs that I've worked with over the years. You see this as a real attribute, right? The ability to make this leap and bring the organization along with them. I remember one chief exec of an infra owner-operator that I worked with years ago. He was looking at improving productivity in their maintenance operations, and said, right, we're going to take 15%. We're going to improve productivity by 15% over the next 3 years. And I asked him, well, how did you come up with that? Did you, what analysis did you do? What kind of forecasting did you do? And he said, well, we just picked a number. It has to be a number. We just picked a number. And of course, after that, we then figured out what the build-up is beneath that number and what initiatives you need to put in place. But at root, there was a leader who just set an ambitious target and one that he knew the organization would go after. So that target setting, that ambition setting needs a leader who can take a leap of faith at some level. Over the last 20, 25 years, I've worked in a lot of very high pressure situations, a lot of intense situations, and I've been lucky enough to work with some amazing teams around me. And that's taught me a lot about assembling a high performing team and motivating a high performing team. And there's a few things that as leaders is really important. And probably the most important thing I'd say is role modeling and recognizing that as a leader in a business or in a team, you're on show the whole time. And it's so important to role model the behaviors you want your people to follow. So whether that is the amount of time that you as a leader will spend actually really problem solving with your team and engaging in the content, whether that's role modeling a feedback culture, so being visible and giving feedback to people, whether it's role modeling the amount of time you spend with clients and customers and committing to 1 day, 2 days a week out speaking to customers, or role modeling the way that you talk about health and safety and role model health and safety. People look and they listen and they pay attention. And so it's so important to do that role modeling. The other thing I'd say is that is so important is recognizing that your teams are the engine of your organization. They're the real heroes of your organization. Ultimately, it's they who do the work, right, under your leadership. And celebrating that and recognizing that and almost, making the teams and the team leaders heroes in your organization is so important. And the final thing I'd say is in building high-performing teams, you need to have a pulse check. You need to be close to the team. And some kind of mechanism, whether it's in your one-on-ones, whether it's in a survey for larger teams, but knowing week in, week out, what's the temperature in your team, right? Are people totally overworked? Are people unhappy because they've got unclear direction? How is energy? Knowing that frequently, week in, week out, and taking action on the results and having discussions around the results is so important, because not only does it help you head off issues you have early on, but it also sends a very strong signal to your team that you're listening and you're taking action and you're coming up with solutions together as a team. You're discussing what you're hearing on the ground and discussing together how you can improve the team experience and improve the kind of team performance. Because what I've also learned is that team performance and team engagement are two sides of the same coin, right? You're never going to get sustainable high team performance without having the right level of engagement and ultimately happiness in the team. And the only way you know if you're getting that is by staying close to the team, listening, and taking action when you see things aren't working right. So I found that the most kind of formative moments for me in team leadership have been when things go really wrong. So both as a team member and as a team leader. And I remember so clearly working on engineering projects and also as a junior consultant, occasionally things go really wrong, right? And either there's an error in the design, or an analysis you've done doesn't land with a client, or clients are unhappy about something, but things go wrong all the time. And the way that leaders behave in that kind of situation is so telling. And I've had situations in my career where leaders have just applied more pressure. So if it's broken, it's not working, just fix it and make it happen. And I remember how that felt as a team member, feeling kind of helpless and feeling I didn't have support. And I've also been in environments where a team leader will come in and sit next to you and roll their sleeves up and get something done. And that's always what I've tried to embody, actually, the person who, when the going gets tough, you actually sit down and you roll up your sleeves and you do the work with your colleagues. And I think that is, for me, that's hugely important in building confidence and trust in the team, but also showing other folks in the team how leaders should behave and what kind of leaders they should grow into. So my experience is that when you do all this, when you put in place, the right transparency and the right steps to check on team health and ensure you have a healthy, high-performing team, you just become incredibly resilient as a team or as a business. And it means that when stuff happens and stuff goes wrong, someone goes sick or there's a client issue, the team just rises to the challenge, and there's always energy around it. And the worst thing you can do as a leader, I think, is to sit on your own in the corner and try and figure out a problem yourself. To me, there's nothing like coming to a great team with an issue you've got and sitting down and figuring out how you're going to solve it together. And you can only do that if you've got a resilient, healthy team to do that. And more often than not, I find your team will surprise you with the kind of the energy they bring and the ideas they bring to actually resolve pretty stressful situations. So at root, it's just fun when you have a high-performing team. Everyone's having fun, people are energized, and even the bumps in the road become kind of fun to solve and to resolve as a team. So really focusing on the team health and team performance and building high-performing teams is absolutely critical to me throughout my career. Impact is something that's always been central to everything that I've done as a consultant, as an engineer, as a leader. And whatever world you're in, right, whether it's around sales, business management, whether you're building a business, having a clear idea of what impact you're trying to achieve, what impact you're trying to have in the world is so important. And many times I've seen organizations just not be clear on that. So whether they're planning a transformation, whether they're building a product, they're not clear on what's the impact they're actually trying to drive. And the reason that's important is because when you're working with clients and customers, you need to be speaking in their language and speaking in terms of impact that they will understand and they will value. So whether that is in, reducing the time it takes to pay an invoice, whether it's around reducing procurement costs, whether it's around, reducing downtime on construction sites or reducing wastage of construction materials, you need to talk about what it is you're doing in terms of the impact it's going to have on the customer. This is particularly important in our industry because we are, by nature, I think, skeptical of technology, slightly resistant to change in some places. And we run on such thin margins that you need to be able to talk in terms of the real business impact we're going to have on our clients. And so being able to articulate what it is you're doing and the impact you're going to have in metrics and measures that clients in the built environment will really recognize is important. And throughout whatever you're doing, whether it's product building, whether it's advisory work, always referencing back to that impact and demonstrating the value you're going to deliver is so important. And if you find at any point you're not doing that or you're not clear on the impact, on what impact you're delivering, you know that something's wrong and it's time to take a step back and figure out, what exactly are we doing here and what are we shooting towards? So impact for me is the North Star that should be at the center of any piece of work or any company. When I talk about impact, it's important to be really specific and really relevant to whichever area or client you're working with at the time. So I've worked with clients where it's all about reducing cost of procuring certain materials. So what is the percentage procurement saving we're going to make in the business would be the impact question you're shooting for. I've also worked in product development where the key measure for the client is on-time deliveries, right? So the impact we're trying to shoot for is the percentage improvement of on-time deliveries of materials to a construction site. Your impact might be reduction of health and safety incidents, but it's really, really important to be specific around what is the impact that's most, or how does our client, to put it another way, how does our client think about impact? What's impact for them? How does our product or our service or whatever we're doing create impact for the client in a language that they'll recognize? It's interesting how my view of impact has changed over the years. So as a kind of young engineer and project manager, impact for me was about inputs. So it was about, is this structure stable? Is the set of documentation complete? Is the specification going to mean the building does what it needs to do? It's about providing inputs. And as I kind of moved through all different areas of the industry, you actually understand more about impact as an output. What's it going to do to the bottom line of my business? What's it going to do to what's this measure going to do to my health and safety performance? What's it going to do for the industry at large? And the shift that I've made in my career is thinking less about impact in terms of inputs and how cool the thing that I'm doing is, and more in terms of output. So what's the impact I'm going to have on a client or someone else in the industry? Because to put it bluntly, clients don't really care too much about the impact, about the inputs. They care about what the output and what the impact for their business is. And so you need to be speaking in terms of the impact on their business. Again, whether that's growth, whether it's margin, whether it's health and safety performance, whether it's revenues they're going to generate from their new building that they're developing. You need to be speaking in terms of their what impact means for them, rather than what impact you think you're creating with your inputs. So that shift in how I think about impact has been pretty formative to me throughout my career. My final reflection is about managing your own career and managing yourself to some extent. And this is something I've learned through experience over the last years. And several things that have been important to me or I've learned over the years. So the first is about goal setting. So, when I left university and started in engineering and construction, I had very specific goals about what I wanted to achieve long term. And what I realized over time is that actually, things change, right? So your preferences change, what you learn new things. And actually I made a bunch of left and right shifts over the years, whether it was to consultancy, whether it was across industries or doing different things. But always with a short-term focus, but a long-term mission, as I mentioned earlier on. So my point is that it's important to have a long-term overarching mission or goal, but not to get too hung up about being about exactly what your 10 to 15 year journey to that goal is going to look like. My experience is it's much more important to have short-term goals, maybe 2 or 3 years, and go after those with a ton of energy and enthusiasm. And as long as those things are taking you roughly in the right direction towards your long-term goal, you'll be good. And then you're also more flexible to whatever might change in external circumstances as well. But the really important thing is to be focused on and commit to the things you want to achieve in the next 2 to 3 years and really go after them. And then lift your head up and think about, okay, what's next for the next 2 to 3 years? And is it going to take me towards my goal? And then on a related topic related to to managing your career, the other thing that's been really important to me is kind of managing your network. And when I was a kind of relatively young professional, the whole concept of networking felt very, it sounded awful actually. It sounded like the last thing I wanted to do, go into a room and network with a bunch of strangers. And what I've recognized over the years that isn't what networking is. Networking is staying in contact with the people you really enjoy working with and being purposeful about that. Because over the years, as you find people move into different positions, they'll introduce you to other people. And for me, that then felt much less forced than going out networking. Rather, it was about staying in touch and building long-term relationships with people I genuinely enjoyed working with, whether it's colleagues, clients, customers, but just staying in touch with people and cultivating that over the years was super important for me. So when I think about managing my career and managing myself, the thing that has been particularly important to me, and that only really comes with experience, is about knowing myself and particularly knowing what I'm good at and not good at, and knowing what gives me energy and what doesn't give me energy. And that means that knowing what I'm good and not good at, I can collaborate with the right people and work with the right people, so we complement each other. And on knowing what gives me energy and what saps my energy, that's important for me in planning my week, planning my day, so I'm mixing up the things that I know I'm going to bring a ton of energy to, and I'm prepared for the things that I know I have to do that are going to take my energy. And that, in terms of personal productivity and personal well-being, that is incredibly important. And so, as you're going through your journey as a founder or an entrepreneur, just be conscious of what you're learning about yourself, what you like, what you don't like, what you're good at, what you're not good at, what gives you energy, what drains your energy. And in your own personal operating model, just build around that, right? And plan for that. So in managing my career, that's become increasingly important as I've gone through the years. So know yourself. I'll give a very practical example of managing your energy. So personally, I have most of my energy kind of early mornings and through the mornings. And so if I know I have a complex piece of thinking I need to do, or drafting or planning, and I need clear time to think about that, I'll usually plan that for the mornings. I know typically after lunch I'll have an energy dip like most people, and the thing that gives me energy is speaking to people and speaking to clients and speaking to colleagues. So I usually plan whether it's client calls or client meetings after lunch, so I know that's kind of going to bring me energy. And so even at that micro level, planning out your day and what you're doing and what doing when is a great way of actually making sure you're bringing your best to every situation, and you're managing those kind of dips in energy and those different things that are going to bring you energy in different ways. When I think about my personal operating model, one of the things that I'm working on is that I love meeting with people. I get a lot of my energy from meeting people, but I need time to plan and reflect. And I have this, managing that balance, right, between making sure I have this opportunity to get energy from folks when I meet, but also I'm actually protecting that time to reflect and consolidate and build a plan, whether it's for a particular client or our business overall. And so, yeah, in my operating model, I need to make sure I carve out that time to do that. The other thing I continuously working on, I also get a lot of energy from learning new things and making sure that I've got time in the day, whether it's for reading, whether it's for talking to a colleague about a new proposition we have, that I'm actually learning new stuff every day. And the thing I have to keep working on is that balance between being out there speaking to clients and colleagues and actually that reflective time to make sure I'm developing and I have time to plan and put the right things in place for the future, not just for today. When I look at the AEC sector, there's just opportunity everywhere, which is why I'm in the sector. The scale of the sector, right, with 12, 13% of global GDP, you look at the amount of infrastructure that needs to be built or upgraded over the next years, whether that's transport infrastructure, whether it's climate resilience, whether it's energy transition. We have this huge task ahead of us. And as I mentioned earlier on, we have an industry that is incredibly skilled and I'm incredibly proud of in many ways, but also needs to transform. And so you have this huge addressable market, this huge burning platform, and this need to change. And so the opportunity for me is enormous here. And I think if I had to pick one area that I'm particularly excited about in AEC, and this is because it's the area that I come from, is around engineering design and engineering design workflows and how we actually cut out a lot of waste that we have in engineering design and think about how we can use AI and other technologies really to innovate in the way we do engineering design. Because what I observe, this is from my own experience as an engineer as well, is that there's a lot of time spent in document management and workflows that maybe don't add a huge amount of value in the finished product. And engineers are a scarce resource, and we need engineers working on the difficult, complex, value-added things and not on document management and admin. And so I'm really excited about actually creating that capacity in the engineering workforce to do very cool stuff with technology, to build smarter assets, to get more out of our existing assets. And as I said right at the beginning, deliver our mission of improving on quality of life. Of the lessons that I've shared so far, I think probably the most important one for me is ambition. So when we think about the AEC sector, we think about the scale of challenge and change we need to deliver, and think about the value that we can create as a sector, social value and economic value. We're only going to do that with a huge amount of ambition. So wherever you're playing in the industry, my reflection is that being ambitious and being bold is almost the most important attribute. And that's certainly something that I hold close to me as I think about how we, as Arcadis, now me personally, continue to drive transformation in the industry. When I think back over the last 25 years, the thing that I've loved about working in the sector is just the breadth and the variety that you get exposed to. So that might be variety of industries. So it's energy, water, real estate, whatever, but also just the challenges and the difficult questions you've got to solve, right? Whether it's around organization design, whether it's around talent, whether it's around growth, engineering detail, regulatory, there's always something interesting to work on. And that's what keeps me kind of passionate about the industry and continuing to want to work in it. And hopefully for another 25 plus years, I'm very much looking forward to it. But and I think this is something that we as an industry need to be better about in publicizing and in infusing young people coming into the industry. I mean, if you're a school kid or someone leaving school or university, and what's more exciting than shaping the future of the infrastructure that we touch and use every day? I think it's a fantastic challenge. And I think we all can be better about shouting about that and encouraging others to come and join us.